guys, Dragon2020 here, and today we're going to talk about power, but it's going to be part 3. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Anyways, let's get right into the video. Alright guys, so I pretty much had to redo this entire video. I had a chart, which I'm still going to show you guys because I worked hard on it. It looks very similar to the one that I showed in my Speed of Characters in Genshin Pack Part 2. I had some lore, which I'm still going to tell you. The video was going to be another long one, probably 20 minutes. But then I decided to go back and do some more research before really finishing the video, finalizing the video. And I found some things that make the chart pretty much useless. But again, I'm still going to show it to you after I tell you the feats. So here's what this video is going to be mostly focusing on. The whale, Nahida's statement, or at least going into how powerful characters who have the title God is in the Genshin Impact, and what makes a descender a descender. And we're going to go into the lore talking about that. So let's talk about the whale first. Nervalet fought the whale, the Traveler fought the whale, Tartak fought the whale, Skirk is capable of fighting the whale, her master is capable of fighting the whale. All of them scale to the whale. So I went back to the wiki to see if I could find some more info or some more descriptive things that I can bring to this video. And I strolled all the way to the very bottom and I looked at the translations for different languages. So the English translation is All Devouring Whale. So is the Russian translation. Guess what the Chinese translation is? Both simplified and traditional. Star Devouring Whale. How about the Korean translation? Whale that devoured a star. Japanese. Star swallowing whale. Stellivorius narwhal, which Vorius means feeding on something considered food, and the example is carnivorous. So in almost all of the other translations, besides English, Russian, and Italian, all other translations, including the Chinese one, which is the most credible considering the game was made in China, it is depicted to be capable of eating stars. So that means the whale is star level, and anyone that's capable of beating the whale is star level. And for those who said, well, maybe it's not literally, in Korean it literally says whale that swallowed a star. So not only is it documented to have eaten planets, it's also documented to have eaten stars. The rest of this video is going to be based on this feat, or this description of the whale, and you will see why it's important later on. Alright, before we continue on, I would like to go into a brief explanation on destructive power versus AP, or attack potency. So destructive power is very simple. If we have an island, if we have a nuke, and that nuke is capable of destroying the island, then we could just say that the nuke is island level based on the fact that it destroyed an island. But where AP comes in is where we start putting in stuff like lore. If that island is 10 times more durable than a normal island, and that nuke is capable of nuking that island and destroying that island, then that means that nuke is 10 times island level, even though the explosion itself is as big as the island. There's another scenario that we need to talk about, and that is surface area and range. If an explosion has enough energy to destroy an entire island, yet it doesn't, that's because the radius or the range of the attack isn't large enough to encompass the entire island. It's only contained to that one spot. This is something that is explored in Dragon Ball Super, where Beerus and Goku, they were charging at each other. Each time they were going to punch each other, it risked destroying the universe. Eventually Goku found a way to cancel out that energy and only contain it to each other. This is a perfect example of AP. So if we apply something like planetary to a character, and their attacks aren't capable of destroying the planet even though they have that amount of energy within them, that's why. It's because of range and the surface area of their attacks. It's mostly contained to and around the target. Now let's get into Nahida's statement. Nahida said that the top 3 Fatui Harbingers are on the level of the gods. Let's go into the abilities of these gods. So one of the abilities is the ability to manipulate nature. We see that with Zhongli. One of the Adaptus, he is able to control plants. One Adaptus, of which I forgot the name of, was capable of cleansing an entire section of Leeway, of which when her energy went into the sky, it parted the clouds. Technically, this is nuclear bomb levels of energy, but this is quite literally the bare minimum of what is considered a god in Genshin Impact. But compared to others, she's actually quite weak, which is very important, which you will see later on. Another ability is causing diseases and curing them, as we see with Nahida, and having access to a wealth of different abilities that normal people don't usually have. Even after they pass away, their energy doesn't immediately disappear. It is left still affecting the world. As we see within the factory where the delusions were made, that whole room was filled with the energy from deceased gods. What I'm about to say is the craziest but most important line of scaling that I can ever say for this game. So that factory that I talked about, that room that the Traveler and the Wanderer was in, that whole room was filled with the energy from deceased gods, fed off the Traveler's anger, and incapacitated. If you fast forward all the way to Fontaine, the Traveler drinks 1 cup of primordial seawater, and it lays him out pretty much the same way. The amount of elemental energy within the primordial sea is so toxic it can be used as a poison for non-Fontanians. Diluted primordial seawater is literally handled like a drug. It makes them addicted to it. They start crashing out, they start going crazy, losing their sanity, losing their self-control, everything. This thing is literally considered a drug. Considering on the wiki, it says that the primordial sea is where most life in Tibet first originated from, meaning that the primordial sea itself is capable of creating life. That's one of the abilities of a god in Genshin Impact. Considering an entire room of this energy incapacitated the Traveler, and 1 cup incapacitated the Traveler, that means within this 1 cup, there's more energy in this entire room, especially since this is energy from deceased gods. The one that I mentioned earlier, Split Clouds, which is considered nuclear bomb level, she is quite literally cannon fodder. Usually in Genshin Impact, when gods are referenced, they're talking about characters like Osile, Dvalin, not this person who is able to split the clouds with assistance. Alright, so let's get into the scaling for the low tier and high tier gods. So we have high city level to mid to high island level. And high city level is that one god or Adaptus that split the clouds and changed nature. And the other ones that I'm talking about are Orobashi and Osile. They should be mid to high island level. Depending on the scaling for Orobashi, he could be more powerful than Osile, seeing that he pressed the Ren Shogun and her generals, which should scale to her. So if in that 1 cup, there's high city level to mid island levels of energy, at least more than that, because the Wanderer said gods, as in plural. We don't know if there's 2, we don't know if there's 3, or even 100. The Wanderer specifically said the wrath of the gods fill this factory and it feeds on your anger. So this means potentially the whole factory that was filled with deceased god's energy was affecting the Traveler. Earlier I said in that one room, that was my own way of lowballing it. That technically went against this statement. If it's the whole factory, then a whole factory's worth of deceased god's energy is worth 1 cup of the primordial sea. Now understand that because these are deceased deities or deceased gods, the amount of energy that they would normally have if they were alive would be way more. So this is just energy that's just laying around. Now understand this. Orobashi may have been used to make delusion. The delusion factory was in Inazuma. It's not difficult to take some of his remains and put them inside the factory and let the energy from his remains fuel the factory. So potentially Orobashi was affecting the Traveler. So there are these trees, right? These weird trees. We got the sacred Sakura, we got the tree of the Aranara, we got the Frostbearer tree. All these are connected to the ley lines. The whale didn't eat that, nor did it try to eat the ley lines. It didn't go for Soul, the origin or the main tree where the ley lines even come from. By the way, the ley lines are the roots of the tree. In the tree sprouts that you see, that's the roots of the tree sprouting up into another tree that's also connected to Soul. The whale, it didn't go for any of the Archons. It didn't go for Raiden Makoto at the time. It didn't go for Raiden A. It didn't go for Celestia, if it even could do that. It didn't eat that. It didn't try to eat pretty much anything else on that entire planet but specifically it went for the primordial sea. And the most egregious thing that you have to think about is that the whale did not go for the big yellow star that is in the sky. If Genshin Impact is based off of the real world, then that means that star in the sky is a small star, since our star is a small star. So considering what I just said, and that it took the whale 500 years to consume the primordial sea, that means the amount of energy within the primordial sea is more powerful than the amount of energy within a star. I have a question. How are they keeping this thing fed? No, seriously, how are they keeping this whale fed? If it eats stars regularly, they would have to feed them star levels of energy regularly. And also consider this, the whale is capable of increasing its size, and in one of the translations it says whale that swallowed a star. Usually when you swallow something, it's smaller than you. So the whale can grow to the size of a star in order to consume it, potentially eating it in one bite. If we're going off the translation Stellivorius whale, then most likely it eats stars of all sizes, whether it's large, small. So star level and solar system level may even be the bare minimum for the whale. You could argue that the whale is just straight up solar system level plus, and that Skirk herself is that in multi-solar system level, and her master is just vastly more powerful than even that. This might be me taking things out of context, but this is an argument that you can have if you break down the translations just like I did. If you do any of the roundabout scaling that I did in my speed video, scaling Nervalet to Venti, scaling the whale to the Valen, and Ajdahad to the Valen, you can get Animal Traveler up to these levels as well. But of course he gets stronger as the journey progresses. Here right now is the original chart of what I theorize he originally was. As you see at the end, you see large planet. He easily eclipsed that margin that I'm showing right now, and then here's the other chart that I made immediately afterwards, because I thought this was an insane highball, but it's most likely true based off of feats and statements about the whale. I'm not going to go too in-depth about it. It follows the same formatting as the previous chart in my previous video, Speed of Characters in Genshin Impact. Now, in my previous video, I talked about elements, which should buff the Traveler. If you really want to take into account elements, increase the exponent by 1 or 3. Its scientific notation is an equation. By increasing the exponent number, you increase the amount of zeros that are in the final product of the number once you get done with it. Now, before we move on to this next part, I just want to make this very clear. When Nervalet stopped the primordial sea with one hand, he didn't stop all the energy within the primordial sea, or the amount of energy that was bursting from that one hole in the Fortress of Mirapede. The primordial sea is essentially water with extra benefits, if you catch my drift. Saying that Nervalet scales to the amount of energy within the primordial sea because he did this is the same thing as saying that I can bench press 10 megatons of TNT, and is the same thing as bench pressing the kinetic energy that 10 megatons of TNT can produce from exploding. The unexploded 10 megatons is the potential energy. It's very easy to lift up compared to the amount of energy that 10 megatons can create from exploding. So Nervalet does not scale to the primordial sea. He scales to the amount of water rushing out of the seal. And finally, what makes a descender a descender? It is not talking about power, it's talking about will. It specifically says, this too is my goal, for it is not one that comes from beyond, maybe as one that descends. That title only belongs to wills that can rival the entire world. So this is directly talking about their willpower. So the Traveler, according to this statement, has a will that can rival the entire world. So the Traveler, based off of this statement, has a will that can rival the world, protect the world, sustain the world, destroy the world, and create the world. This speaks on the latent power that is within the Traveler and how he can affect the world around him in terms of like hacks and stuff. Not just power, but it can increase his power. As I stated in one of my previous videos, Hacks of Characters in Genshin Impact, ambition and willpower is one of the things that actually increases the strength of a vision user. It directly leads to a power increase. So with this context, it now makes sense why one twin is considered a descender and the other twin isn't considered a descender. However, to me, one twin only being described as this doesn't make sense. at the beginning of the game, you have a choice between Aether and Lumine. That technically implies that it's up in the air depending on who you choose. They will be backed by this statement. So what this means is the thing that Gnosis are potentially made out of are the willpower of the third Descender, because Gnosis are made from the third Descender. And we see this quality in pretty much every Archon that's wielding a Gnosis. How they're able to protect the world, sustain the world, destroy the world, create the world, rival the world, especially in the Ryan Shogun for rivaling the world. She's the strongest Archon, period. I think that's all that needs to be said about this statement, and I think I could just end the video right there. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe, and as always, have a wonderful day.